Good evening. Mossdog here. It's been a minute. Let's get back to it. How to win with Big Wagh, November 2023. I had to think about this video a lot. Here's the TLDR for the experienced players. Our boys have changed this army. Going from 80 point battle line to 220 point battle line is obviously going to change stuff. I do not believe that the Maw Crusher fits into the big army list very easily. It's been a struggle trying to get him into any list. Gougers is likely the only big pig that's worth considering, and that's only if you need him for a particular role, but I don't see it. Snatchaboss is our now go-to monster. If you're looking for a big monster, it's going to be a cruel boy, I believe. Gobsprak is still king in this meta, and it's more of a grindy style than a surgical removal than it used to be, but it is still a surgical removal army. Check out my video on lists for some lists. So for those that are relatively new to Big Wagh and learning how to play, the overall army strategy is to stall. Since you're building up Waaagh points over time, you want to wait until you have that +1 to hit, +1 to wound table wide before you really get into combat. Because you can pull from so many war scrolls in so many places, you have all these different kinds of counters. You have all these different tools that you can use to kill things that your opponent is putting on the table. So it becomes like a counter deck, a reactive, army, not deck. I'm thinking Magic the Gathering here. So, you know, if your opponent has like big monsters, well, you have tools for that. If your opponent has like foot heroes, there's tools for that. So it's all about finding the right answer for what your opponent is doing, and it can be quite tricky to play. We have significantly better frontliners now, so let's use them. Let's actually use these battle line units to their fullest potential. For those of you familiar with Magic the Gathering, I would say this is a red deck that splashes blue, or vice versa. It's like a blue and a red deck for sure. Battle traits. The power of the Waaagh. You build up points to make your boys hit harder. Important thresholds are at the 12 Waaagh point mark, which is where you get +1 to cast, and the 20 Waaagh point, where you get +1 to wound table wide. So those are kind of your two important thresholds. Make sure you have a plan to get there. Make sure you know what you're going to do. If it means charging one extra unit, it has to be something that you're thinking about and considering. There's the here we go heroic action. It just generates Waaagh points. This is normally really good on turn 1 and turn 2. As I said before, you're trying to get to that 12 point threshold by turn 2. When you're casting turn 2, you want to be able to have +1 to cast. It's pretty important in this army. In the list that I'm currently running, it's a 6 spell list. So having +1 is pretty good. And then we have Cunning, Brutal, and Savage. These are 3 different rules from the 3 different Orc war clans. We have Venom Encrusted Weapons for Cruel Boys, Mighty Destroyers for Iron Jaws, and War Paint, which is a 6-up ward for Bone Splitters. Poor Bone Splitters. I think they got shafted on this rule. I think that if it was Tireless Trackers that they got, which is a pre-game move, I have a feeling that the Bone Splitter models would actually be way more viable in this army. But what are you gonna do? C'est la vie, hein? Qu'est-ce qu'on va faire avec ça? Rien. So, realm rules and how they interact with the Big Wagh army. So, Endorian Locusts. These are wizards that have less than 10 wounds and are not unique. We have a lot. Weird Knob Shaman, Swamp Call Shaman, Wargog Prophet, Wardock, Maniac, Weird Knob. And then from there, we actually have some pretty good allies that we can come in here that are also Locusts. Fungoid Cave Shaman, Madcap Shaman, and Web Spinner Shaman. We tend not to see the Gloomspike Gits casters, but we have a lot just to choose from for orcs. And then there's the optimal focus roll. At the start of the round, pick a locus. At the start of the round, you get to pick if you're going second, okay, you get to pick a hero. If that hero is a Endorian Locust, then you get to give it +1 spell casts, and if it's not an Endorian Locust, it gets a command point. generally speaking, in caster-heavy Big Wagh lists, you're going to want to pick a Mega Boss and give it a command point because he gets to issue the same command twice. So that, like, just the fact that he gets to issue the same thing twice and you're getting more value for the command points, I tend to go with that. If you're a low cast list, I could see why you would want an additional cast, especially if you were running Shaman of the Chilled Lands, or, right? Because if you can do, like, a few different spells, like if you have a Waaagh Prophet that has, you know, is not within 12, so you're not going to be lasering, and you want to cast, like, Mystic Shield, Foot of Gork, and... sorry, one second. Like something like that. Like I could see that being good, but generally speaking, if you're not sure what to do and you have quite a number of casts, just giving a command point to a Mega Boss is, you know, going to be an absolutely fantastic choice. Yeah, and the Nullstone Adornments, we're not taking them. We have lots of really powerful casters, but you should at least know what they are. So when someone throws a pouch of Nullstone Dust at you, you're able to react and deal with it properly and not getting caught. Primal Magic, I'm just going to leave this up on the screen. I believe everyone knows what Primal Magic is at this point. If you're not sure what Primal Magic is, you should check it out. Or you should read this screen, or you should check out the General's Handbook for this season. The only real important thing I feel for Primal Dice is I strongly recommend that you pretty much exclusively use your Primal Dice for Gobsprakk Unbinds. If you're going second and you go through your opponent's phase, going second right now is so good for us. It's so good. We want to go second. We want to get that extra command point. We want to be able to use our Primal Dice in the Unbinds before we cast in our turn. That's ideal, right? Because then when we're going into our turn, we've already spent all of our Primal Dice on Unbinds, and if we have any left over, then we're able to use them to cast our own spells, knowing that our opponent, isn't going to be casting more spells later. So, very, very good. Spells. Gobsprakk. Gobsprakk has all the spells in the Cruel Boys lore, so he has a lot of really good spells. So what are we doing with our Primal Dice? I already touched on this. We're going to be using them for Unbinds with Gobsprakk primarily. Some other really important spells. We have Hoarfrost. This is excellent to use on Gore-Gruntas. The Tusks and Hooves profile in Gore-Gruntas has no rend, and so if you get 1, 2, or 3 rend and you add, it's a large volume of dice. It's 12 dice for every 3 Gore-Gruntas, and so getting 1 rend, 2 rend, 3 rend on those Gore-Gruntas on that Tusks and Hooves is really, really good. Rupture, so I haven't really seen this spell used very much, so I don't know. And Merciless Blizzard, it gives us a second Waaagh, kind of. So Shaman of the Chilled Lands is an absolutely legitimate command trait to take, but more on that later. Laura of the Swamp is good, therefore Gobsprakk is good. Waaagh is likely taking a Frostlore spell, probably Hoarfrost. There's no other spells that are good in the Waaagh, in the Bone Splitters lore for Big Wagh, right? The Bone Splitter spells are good in the Bone Splitters armies, but not really in the Big Wagh army. They have a lot of like Bone Splitters keywords, and we don't run a lot of Bone Splitters. So I generally take Hoarfrost on my Waaagh. Swamp Kala Shaman is normally taking Choking Mist or Blizzard. The reason you might consider Blizzard is because Gobsprakk can cast Choking Mist, right? So the Swamp Kala Shaman, like a cast of Mystic Shield from a Swamp Kala Shaman is good. Casting sometimes Summon Boggy Mist can be good as well. So, and then you can have Blizzard. So if your opponent gets close, you're just going to nuke them with the Blizzard spell. It can feel pretty good to have another model on the table that is like a casting threat. It's like, oh geez, you're within 12 of my Waaagh and my Swamp Kala Shaman. What am I going to do? Weird Knob Shaman normally always takes Hand of Gork. That teleport spell is fantastic. For command traits, for casters, like Master of Magic versus Shaman of the Chilled Lands, both are good. More on that later. Endless spells are also good. You might want an endless spell given how many casts we have in this army. I'm always looking to try to sneak Pendulum into lists. And the Warlord Enhancement spell can also feel pretty strong. If you're taking Warlord and you're not taking a Waaagh and a Mega Boss, or if you're going double Warlord, taking an extra spell enhancement can actually feel pretty good, right? Like a Swamp Kala Shaman having Blizzard and Choking Mist can feel pretty nice. Like having lots of options and lots of flexibility. I think what it turns into is a lot of your casters end up also having Blizzard, which can be cool, right? Like if you have 3 casters that all have Blizzard, it's like you're going to be killing stuff, Waagh's War Scroll spell, Fist of Gork, wasn't errated, So that means that you can throw Primal dice at it, and then if the casting roll, including the Primal dice, is 10 or more, you deal 4 up. On a 4 up, you deal mortals instead of on a 6 up. So this can actually be pretty good. This is one of the best places to use Primal dice offensively, I have found. How good is Hoarfrost? So you need to roll only a 7 after 12 Waaagh points because you're getting +1. You can use Primal dice, or you could also use Master of Magic to try to cast this. It's not tough to cast a 7. It's, like it's average, so you can do it. So here we have some information, some numbers on Gore Gruntas, and this is of course using Tusks and Hooves. So you can see that with Violent Fury against a let's say a 4-up save or a 3-up save. Against a 3-up save, you're going to do 18.37 damage. But with Violent Fury and Hoarfrost, it goes from 18.3 to 29. To 29. That's a lot of damage. Pigs with Hoarfrost on Tusks and Hooves is scary. And I do believe that these numbers are with 3 on the rend. Or maybe it's on 2. I can't remember. You'll have to check it out yourself. It's been a minute since I made this slide. But the damage goes up a lot. So how good is Hoarfrost? Very good. Fully buffed up pigs with it's nutty. If you're like Mystic Shield, Hoarfrost, Violent Fury, Teleport, Mighty Destroyer, 3-inch charge, like whatever they're getting thrown at is dying. So command traits, what command traits to take? So you have Master Magic. This is the one that I always take. I put it on my Weird Knob Shaman, and it's so that I can just re-roll the Teleport. I'm not going to be using Primal dice with Master of Magic because I'm using Primal dice with Gobsprak. So this is just another way that I can have more consistent magic use, right? With the +1 at 12 Waaagh points, all I need is a 6. I need a 6 on the dice, and I can re-roll. So I'm just adding a lot of consistency to that. Shaman of the Chilled Lands is the other option. What you're giving up is that more consistent without having to use Primal dice teleport spell, but it gives your general the ability to cast Hoarfrost and Blizzard. So, I mean, it can be pretty cool. We can also take a Warlord for an extra spell enhancement, right? So that we can get this like having a Blizzard on lots of different casters, as I was saying. And then if you take a Cruel Boys general, you can also take Super Sneaky, right? You can Super Sneaky Gobsprak, you can Super Sneaky Breakaboss, you can Super Sneaky Hobgrots. There's still lots of good Super Sneaky targets, but I don't know what, I guess it has to be a Snatch-a-Boss pretty much, right? Because it can't be Gobsprak, and you cannot take Super Sneaky on the Shaman, on the Swamp Calla Shaman. You cannot do it. The Cruel Boys command traits say for Kill a Boss, Snatch a Boss, or Break a Boss only. So to use Super Sneaky, you have to use one of those models. But it can still be pretty strong. So yeah, I mean, Master Magic's kind of my go-to, I think. For Artifacts of Power, Glowing Tattoos, still easily the best pick. This increases the damage that your Wargog Prophet can do with his Death Mask significantly. So much. I mean, it's so good. Destroyer for an Iron Jaws Mega Boss, if you're running one, is also incredibly strong. Very, very good. That once per game +3 damage is really good. If you're looking to pop Destroyer, a Mega Boss on foot has, I believe, is it 8 dice? Orc Mega Boss? 8? Is it 8 attacks? I think it is. Yeah, it's 8 attacks with 3s to hit, 3s to wound, but only 1 rend. So throwing a Hoarfrost onto a Mega Boss on foot for the Destroyer turn can actually be pretty significant. You know, if it's early in the game and you roll a 1 or a 2, like if you get 1 on your Hoarfrost roll, well, you can have, +1 wounds and then all out attack, so you're on 2s and 2s at least. But if it's later in the game and you're already on a board wide +1 to hit, +1 to wound, and you get 2 or 3 rend, like all of a sudden, if it's 2s to hit, 2s to wound, 3 rend, and 5 damage, and if you throw Mighty Destroyer on it, it's 6, like the damage potential just skyrockets. So Destroyer is a very good artifact choice. And then Mork's Eye Pebble from the Cruel Boys book is also very good. Just you're playing more of a castle army, kind of depends on your meta. Normally, I'm taking 1 War Chanter and I'm going Glowing Tattoos and Destroyer. That's kind of my go-to. I think that those are pretty essential. Mount traits. We're having a hard time right now with mount traits because there's very few things with a mount that we actually want to take. So we have Fasten. Fasten can be very, very good if you're going to do like the super sneaky break-a-boss trick. Because if you super sneaky a break-a-boss, he can then immediately use Fasten to get within 3 inches for a charge. Right? So you're almost guaranteeing your charge at this point. So, yeah. That's pretty strong and pretty scary, especially if you're like buffing them up and everything. I don't really think Mystic Shield, right? But that can be pretty good. You can also put it on a Maniac Weird Knob, but since you can't move and cast Blizzard, the Maniac Weird Knob has kind of fallen off, but it's there. You can take a Maw Crusher with Fasten, and then the Maw Crusher is able to go everywhere on the table all the time, right? So, I mean, that's good. And then you also have a Swamp Boss, like either Swamp Boss, well, I can't take in Fasten on Swamp Boss Scumtrek, but Snatcher Boss on Sludgebreaker Beast. Taking Fasten there can be really, really good. Some other options, something that I've been thinking about a lot more lately is the Kellerboss on Corpse Ripper Vulture. Having Fasten on him is cool. You're able to zip around the battlefield because he has a 14-inch move, so you can, sneaky miasma move Fasten. Like you can basically get anywhere you want on the board, so that can be pretty cool. I've been having a hard time fitting him in Big Wagh lists, but I think that if you're gonna run a Vulture Boss, I think that it can definitely be worth it. And then you also have a Gnash Tooth, right? That's a mounted hero, so he's a little bit safer and cheaper at 120 points with his 3-up save, but you can throw a Fasten on him. It can help with some battle tactics and other things, right? Like he can sort of go off on the side of the board and set up for surround and destroy. But then if you do that, he can then, move 10, Fasten 10, right? Kind of get back into the fight a little bit easier. So yeah, that's definitely worth thinking. It's all these things, all these Fasten also works just incredibly well with the teleport spell at the Hand of Gork. So, Hand of Gork into, if you're an Iron Jaws unit, you can Mighty Destroyers, but if you're a Cruel Boys unit, you can Fasten to get that really short charge. Can be really good. Weirden also has a place. Depends on what your meta's like. If you're playing against a lot of Seraphon, then Weirden can be pretty good on something you want to keep alive. And then you can also throw Smellian on a Snatcher Boss. This gives -1 to hit, so it just makes that Snatcher Boss a lot harder to kill. And that has value too. But like I said, right now I'm having a hard time finding something onto which I want to place a mount trait, because I'm not really running a Mega Boss. I'm not really running a Snatcher Boss. I'm not running a Vulture Boss. So heroes in this army are coveted. We will run 6 heroes pretty much every time. That's why the double Warlord is totally viable, depending on what heroes you're running. But for core battalions, for Warlord is great. I've talked about it a few times. We're basically taking it every time. You can also take the Andorian Acolytes, because it's at the start of the hero phase. On a 3-up, you get a Primal die. So, because you're throwing all your Primal dice at Gobsprack, if your opponent has an Andorian Acolyte Battalion, and you do not have an Andorian Acolyte Battalion, and you're trying to shut down their magic using their Primal dice, you won't be able to keep pace with them. They're going to have more spells than you have Primal dice to throw at them. So, I think, personally, that Andorian Acolytes is kind of essential. It's kind of essential. You can also throw stuff into Wizard Finder and Iron Jaw's Fists. These are just, bonuses. We have so many models, and we're not taking a battle regiment, so, you throw as many of these things on as you possibly can. As many battalions as you can, because why not? Be sure to check out my video on some Big Wagh lists to see what I'm using for battalion specifically. Grand strategy, you're taking Waaagh. Just take Waaagh. You have to get a battle line or your general to the other side of the table, like into your opponent's territory. So you just teleport him. The general can teleport himself on turn 5, right? You need 6 on the dice with a reroll, no problem. You teleport him behind enemy lines, and then he can just sit there. Great. You can also do that with like an Ardboys unit or a Brutes unit. They just teleport them and get them on the other side of the table, and you're good to go. No problem. I've got this grand strategy before by teleporting Ardboys on my opponent's side of the table, fighting, only having a couple models left, retreating, and then just like running them off into the corner and being like, okay, like they're a dead unit. Maybe I'll feel like rallying them, but I in that game I didn't. I just sort of ran them off into the corner to hide. An easy grand strategy. Battle tactics. Here I'm going to discuss the different battle tactics that you can take in Big Wagh, and I'm going to give them an S tier, A tier, B tier, or F tier. S tier is you're going to use these every single time. Every game you're going to use this battle tactic. At least you're going to at least look to get it, and it's very easy to get. So, time to get stuck. And A is like solid good. You'll see it a lot of the time. B is good if, right? It's a situational. And then F is like, it's either going to be really hard or impossible for us to take this or to pick this battle tactic. Time to get stuck in is where you have to be, all of your models have to be within 12 inches, or your, not all your models, all your units have to be within 12 inches of an enemy. This can be really good against Alpha Strike armies that are just going to crash into you. And then you're like, okay, you know, you can only use it on turn 1, turn 2, but you're like, okay, well, I know I'm going to be within range, so, you know, it's an easy one to get. Wait for it, lads, is the Big Wagh specific one. It's S tier because you can choose this after you roll the Waaagh points. I did this in the last game I played. I started the turn with 24 Waaagh points. I rolled, my general rolled a 6 for Waaagh points, and then immediately I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to take Wait for it, lads, because I've already succeeded it. You have to be very careful with, at the beginning of the hero phase, timing effects and abilities, and then during the hero phase type or effects and abilities. And you have to think about how you're going to order your operations for maximizing efficiency and power with this army. Squish the puny gets, it's B tier. Again, this is situational. Squish to puny gets is only if you have an Iron Jaws general, which I do most of the time, and you have to kill all the battle line units. So it's like, you know, it's one of those like late game things. You're like, well, who do you have left for battle line? Oh, only those 3 models? Oh, okay, squish to puny gets it is. It's not bad, but it's only situationally good. Some armies you're not going to be able to kill their battle lines, right? So this doesn't apply. That's our turf now. This is one of the Iron Jaws ones. You just have to have 2 Iron Jaws units within 3 inches, not wholly within, just within 3 inches of the center of the battlefield. Pretty easy to get. You tend to move your army like a big castle, and so if you're moving into the center of the map, this is very easy to achieve. Not as easy as Sneak Up. Sneak Up is the Cruel Boys one, where all of your Cruel Boys units have to be within 3 inches of a terrain feature. Not wholly within, just within. You can have a line of 6 Bolt Boys where the last one in line is just towing into a 3-inch radius from a terrain piece. Very easy to get. This is a very easy turn 1 to get, too. Then we have Take Dat, You Suckers. This is a Cruel Boys one, but you can only take this one if your general is a Cruel Boy, right? Sneak Up, your general can be anybody, and same with Dad's our turf now. But Take Dat, You Suckers has to be a Cruel Boys general. You have to do 2 things. You have to deal at least 10 wounds or mortal wounds in any combinations to enemies, and you have to take fewer. So if it's going to be a battle, if it's going to be a melee combat light round, you can just deal this with a Waaagh. And you can do the Waaagh mask before you pick this battle tactic. So if you dealt 12 mortal wounds with your Waaagh, and you know you're not going to be charging in and like taking any damage in melee, you can actually achieve this one before you pick it. So it's worth thinking about if you have a Cruel Boys general. Moving on to the book ones. Intimidate the Invaders. This one's B, but it probably should be A. This is where you have half your army outside of your territory. Again, because we tend to move as a castle, you know, moving up out of your territory, like having half of your units out isn't really that tough to do. You have a lot of foot hero wizards, so making sure that they're stepping out of that your territory into your opponents is important, but not too bad. Reprisal is where you kill a unit that killed your general. This is not good because if our general's dead, it's a big problem for us. It means they've gotten into our castle. It means that they're killing all of our little foot heroes. So this is sort of like a last ditch. Like maybe at the very end of the game, if they do happen to kill your general, you can use reprisal against them. Endless Expropriation. I believe this is the one where you have to kill using spells. No, that's Magical Mayhem. Endless Expropriation. Oh, right. So Endless Expropriation is the one where you pick one enemy unit that summoned an endless spell that's on the battlefield, or that's bonded to an incarnate, and you kill it. So again, this is situational. It's like if that model or if that wizard is a wizard you want to kill, and you're going to kill it this turn, and it's cast an endless spell, right? So we have and if, right? So then you can pick it and kill it. not too bad. Magical Dominance, this is don't have anything unbound when you cast, so this is one that we can keep our eye on throughout the game. Generally speaking, I don't like this turn 1 because I try really hard to deploy Gobsprak with an unbind ranged to deny this from my opponents, but I have done games where I put Gobsprak with an unbind range of my opponent to try to deny Magical Dominance for my opponent on their first turn, and then on my turn, I just cast with some wizards that are outside of 30, and Gobsprak doesn't cast anything. Done that before. You can also try to kill their wizards and do this later in the game. That's an option too. Magical Mayhem is kill something with spells or the abilities of endless spells. If you're running an endless spell, this is easier, but we tend not to have a lot of straight up raw damage spells in this army. They're mostly utility spells, so this one's a little bit tricky. Bait and Trap, you complete this tactic. You have to retreat with 2 units and charge with 2 units. Orcs don't retreat, we fight to the death. F this battle tactic. Led into the Maelstrom, this is charged with a hero and a battle line unit. This one's actually pretty easy to do. You have a few heroes that are good in combat, so this could be like Gobsprak, Mega Boss, even a War Chanter actually slaps pretty good, so that can be pretty good. And then Surround and Destroy, again, this one's situational, depending on the battle plan, depending on your deployment, but, you know, with your teleport spells, you can actually kind of, this one's can be pretty cool. You know, you can teleport your Bull Boys to the other side of the map or something and try to get all 3, you know, not too bad. Or you can run around with Gore-Gruntas, you know. So in conclusion, Hoarfrosted Pigs still do work. Hoarfrost your Gore-Gruntas, get them into the fight. Gobsprak is king. Your Unbind, throwing Primal Dice into Gobsprak's Unbind is so good. Overall, this army is the best Orc army right now, and this season it's actually ranking in the top like 5 armies. And I think it's because of a combination of the battle tactics and Gobsprak, very, very strong. And we get the best of both worlds with Primal Dice. We have good spells to cast, and we have strong counter magic. So as I was saying before, if you don't need them for counter magic, then you can throw them into your spells. It can be pretty cool. Yeah, it's a great time for a Waaagh. It feels good. If you don't play Big Wagh, but you do play the other Orc war clans, I think it's time to start, guys. This is the season for sure to get into Big Wagh. It's feeling pretty good. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on, because I didn't put it anywhere else in the video, just as a bonus, I wanted just to take a quick talk about the big pigs for a sec. So at the beginning of the video, I mentioned how I believe that the Gouger is the only big pig that's worth considering. I still firmly believe this is true. He's 10 more points than a unit of Gore-Gruntas, and Gore-Gruntas and the Maw-Grunta Gouger fill 2 very different roles. The Gore-Gruntas, right, the little pigs, you can teleport them out of 18, 12 inches from any other heroes, and they can issue commands to themselves, and they can Mighty Destroyers into a charge. So they're like a surgical strike piece. They take buffs very well. They deal more damage when buffed than a Gougers, and they can be sort of anywhere on the map that you need them. They can really get in and do some damage. The Gouger, on the other hand, the big pig, he is more of a wound bag, right? Because he doesn't degrade, he doesn't have a monster table that degrades, he fights as well at full health than when he has 1 wound left. So if you're looking for like a tar pit type unit to get in the way and slow your opponent down, especially with, you know, roaring your opponent to make sure they can't get those all-out attack, all-out defense stuff, he's better at that role. However, our Ard boys are even better at that role. So I don't see a place really. Unfortunately, the big pigs are just kind of womp womp, I feel, at this point. I'm gonna release a video hopefully this weekend talking about all the monsters in the army from a Big Wagh perspective, and discussing like what, you know, how much damage per point are they dealing, and what kind of enhancements can they take, and kind of giving my thoughts on them all, and thinking about how they can fit in different lists. So be sure to keep an eye out for that video. But until then, like, subscribe, Waaagh.